Boom. Okay. You guys, so it's another fantastic day to be alive, like every day, right? Oh, I love it. I love waking up and just being alive.
It's the best.
It's the best when you wake up and be alive. It's
Not
so
dead.
awesome. Hi. Oh man. Hi, Emily. Oh, then gone. Hey, buddy. Good to see you, man. Oh, it's awesome. Okay, so hope I love this time of year. I love this time of year. It's such, the cold, the fall colors, the fall weather, and like going into the holidays. Just
Thanksgiving.
Christmas, like just all of it. And as I why it matters so much to me, I start thinking back, and this is actually really good context for our topic tonight. Is, you guys know, part of my story as a teen, I ended up out on my own, and so I went through the holiday seasons alone
When you were 16.
when I was 16, and like I love food and I love people. So sitting by yourself on Thanksgiving or Christmas
with no food
and no people, it's like lame. Oh, so lame. So literally when I was 16, 17, I remember going through this Christmas season and thinking, this is never going to happen to me again, ever. And I knew even at that age that if that was going to be the case, if I was going to change this for the rest of my life, I had to build real connection with friends and family. I had to build relationships. And at that point, I didn't know how. Like I was no good at it. Somebody gave me a copy of, I've got it back here on my shelf. There it is. How to Win Friends and Influence People, because I needed it, right? I actually love that book. That book's amazing. But I needed to learn how to build relationships. And so as part of what we're going to talk about tonight is like building deep, special connection. Can you hear? We have screaming children at the door. I love it. So the idea is like, how do we build this connection and build relationships? How do we create bonds? And I want you to think about that. I'd love some interaction, chat, and Mike and stuff. But really, what we're going to talk about today and kind of discuss is like how can we really do that and do it effectively and do it in an appropriate way. And you guys know this already. Maybe you experienced it yourself, or you know people. If you know anyone, you know people who've struggled with the relationship with their parents or the relationship with their siblings. I think one of the most common things in the world, it's even crazy to think about and say, but the more I coach people, the more I work with people, one of the most common things in the world is some kind of turmoil from the way they were raised. You guys with me on that? Like there's frustration. One of my friends, her name's Anna, just amazing human being. She has a YouTube channel that is extremely successful, and it's called The Crappy Childhood Fairy. And all of her resources are to help people who had a crappy childhood, which makes her very successful, because it turns out there's a lot of people that had a crappy childhood, right? And so her whole platform is giving people tools and resources to recover from a crappy childhood. And then you talk to anyone. That's why I say, like, if you guys know any human beings, then you know people who had a crappy childhood, because it's so common. And maybe you had some tough things like I did and like Rachel did. And it's like, well, well, that's a whole nother topic of working through those things. But what we want to focus on now is building amazing relationships with the people in your life, particularly your family and your children, right? If you don't have children yet, this is the best time to learn this. Because, oh man, it's so funny when you get married, you're like, oh, I should start learning about marriage. Or when you get your first kid, like in our case, we adopted Kaya, and so like they literally handed us a baby We had 4 hours. They called Rachel at 8 and they said, meet us at the airport at noon. And we're like, we had better stop and buy a manual. Because we have no
But they
idea
didn't have a manual.
what to do with this child. It was crazy. So on that note, I guess that's a good preface. How do we really lean in? Oh, Troy's saying, I like to listen to the stuff about kids. Definitely don't have kids yet. It's funny to me when I have opinions about raising kids.
Yeah.
Is that true?
My mom and
Oh,
I
man.
always joke about this joke. It's funny because it says, I used to have 6 theories about raising children, and now I have 6 children and no theories.
I love it.
We remind each other of that
Yeah, all the time. Yep, exactly. Okay. So we'll start with like a seemingly simple question. And I'd love in the chat or on the mic, why does connection matter so much? I mean, so we're starting on a very bottom basic premise. Why does connection matter so much? Well, I like moving around.
I know, but it's changing the
I need a
lighting.
stage here where I walk across the stage and move around. Okay,
You're changing the lighting.
I'll do it. It's like a TEDx, or you can't move from my little circle. Why does the bond matter? This one's worth thinking about for good 10 or 15 years or more. Why does the bond matter? Any teenage boys that happen to be with us tonight can chime in. Yeah, buddy, I'm calling you out. I like your thoughts. No pressure. We'll just wait until you all answer. Why does the bond matter?
What bond? James Bond?
James Bond.
That's good.
Ooh. Yeah. Read it.
Bonds matter because what else is there? Exactly. If you don't have any bonds with anyone, like, what do you have?
I remember actually spending a lot of time in my university philosophy classes discussing that. And I remember at the time thinking like, why are we talking about this? This is crazy. But there's this whole area of philosophy of the individual and that there can be no, well, one thing they said is a great thinker said that no man is an island. No person is an island. And I was like, man, and so you get deep into this of like, yeah, really its essence is, what else is there? Like, and here I lead a class for youth, and we just finished the Book of Joy, which is an absolutely fantastic book talking about love and connection. And their message throughout the entire thing is it's our connection with people that brings us deep joy. At the end of the book, they have you do a meditation. And so I walked this whole class through the meditation yesterday. And what it was is like to just, what you do is you close your eyes and you think through every single thing in your life and feel gratitude for the people who brought that thing into your life that you didn't, right? So this pencil, it's so simple. But if you had to recreate a pencil yourself, could you even make an eraser? Not me. Could you inject the lead into this little tube like a Twinkie? I don't know how they get lead in there, right? Or my AirPods, man. I didn't do anything to create these AirPods. I am so grateful for whoever invented and created AirPods. And I mean, computers and books and the cow that gave its life so I could have this leather journal. You know what I'm saying? Like, you start going through everything, the tree that it was a pretty substantial tree that gave its life so I could have my desk. You with me? Like you start going on stuff like there's no way I'm not an island. Even the clothes I have on, like somebody grew the cotton and sent it somewhere and put it together in some foreign land and shipped it back and put it in a store. And now I'm wearing it. And it's too small for me. Right? Like
That's your muscles.
that's my muscles
working out,
growing.
babe.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, what else is there? And so then building these relationships, and a life without relationships is genuinely
Well,
an empty life.
Well, and that's fascinating because you're talking about no person is an island, because even all of these things that we have are brought to us by other people. And yet, even if we had all of those things and yet still had no personal connections and bonds, our life, we could have a lot of gratitude for all of that, but our life would still lack meaning.
Absolutely.
Because we didn't have the personal connections. Because it's one thing that, yeah, people made the shirt for you, but if you've got no people in your life, what's the point?
What's
Who
the
cares?
point of my shirt? Because
Exactly.
nobody's looking at it.
Right.
Okay, let's keep going. Another one here. We have no influence without connection.
Mhm.
Ooh, great insight. Right? Great insight. What's the importance of a bond? Without connection, there's no influence.
And
That's profound.
that is essentially and critically true in our personal relationships with our significant other, with our spouse, with our children. That if we don't have that bond with them, then we don't have influence. And we have to have influence with the people in our life, because while life lacks meaning and purpose without having others in our life that we connect with, having them there by their very nature also adds a lot of complexity, sometimes conflict. And so we have to be able to have influence to reduce that conflict, but that doesn't happen without the bond. Because if you just have, if you talk to the guy that made this shirt, he doesn't know you from Adam, and you lack influence over him because you don't share a bond. You don't have a connection with them, with him or her.
Wow. So one is, trying to influence. The other is the influence we receive from people we're connected with. They did this study, and it was way before human rights, but they did a study and they realized that babies will die.
Wasn't it during World War II? Was it like Nazi?
I think it was a little bit
Germany?
Before. I don't know.
Or was it Russia? The
It
Gulag?
was in Russia.
Okay.
I think it was in Russia. So they did this study, and there was a lot of babies in the orphanage, and the ones who didn't get time being held and touched died.
Well,
So
they even did a
literally-
study where they just left a baby there and didn't touch it. They would feed it and
they-
change its diaper without touching
Yep.
it, which I don't know how they did that.
Well, just no holding, no caressing, no talking.
And babies who were not touched would die. They need it. It's a physiological human need to touch, and touching creates bonding.
So touch more people. That's message number one. Touch more people. Number two is express love more often. We were in a touching moment one time. Rachel and I, we love leading trips. You guys
Touching
know
moment.
that.
We were touching.
It was no, there was no physical touching. It was a touching moment because we were leading this trip and we were having a discussion about family and expressing love. And there was a gentleman who we just both love so much. He grew up in an environment where they just didn't express love. And so he raised his children. They're all grown and gone. And he raised all his children without ever expressing his love. He teared up and was so sorrowful. He wished he had told his children he loved them more. And he even was crying more. He's like, I just can't do it. I don't know. I can't do it. I can't. He just couldn't bring himself to say, I love you. And I've met a lot of families like that. And it's like, oh man. So Part two, will you, okay, number one, will you, and I'm being sincere here, will you please touch more? Like it's holding hand on the shoulder, arm around, like, yeah, just like that. It makes a difference. It really does. It makes a difference. And then, well, even in nursing, it makes a difference, doesn't it? Like in those, yeah, you walk in and say, hey, how you doing today? The touch matters so much. But then may I invite you, please, and if it's for some of you, it's uncomfortable, like practice it, please express love and gratitude and appreciation more often. So many people are just starving for verbal acknowledgement. I had a coaching session today that was poignant and painful because this individual doesn't feel recognized and heard and loved, and it's not being expressed. What could be worse than trying to do your best and nobody says thank you and I love you? You know what I'm saying? Okay, who needs to express love more often? And gratitude. So all of you, will you, again, I'm getting into coach mode here, you guys. Will you think of, and just make kind of either write it down or make a mental commitment, think of a person you need to express love to that you haven't for a while, or maybe ever. And then today, before this day ends, I want you to express love. A text message, an email, a phone call, in person. This is my invitation, express some love. Man, this is fun. I love this stuff. I'm getting into this. It's so good. Okay, gotta catch up. Here's another one. Emily said, if you don't have it, again,
Casey.
coming back to why we need bonds. If you don't have any relationships with people when you go through a hard time, oh, this is from Kason. Thanks, Kason. You don't have anyone to turn to. Oh, brother, see, that's why we needed you to show up, man. That's good. That's good. And I think we've been there before when you feel loneliness. I don't know about all of you, but when I felt deep, deep loneliness, even at times when I was surrounded by people, I felt completely alone. I think loneliness is the worst thing I've ever experienced. Hunger, pretty miserable, you know, cold, worry, fear, man, even discouragement, hopelessness, but loneliness is brutal. And so we want a life that is full, absolutely full of people who are on our side. With me? Do you guys ever think about your funeral? Who you want to be there? What you want them to say?
No.
Anybody? I'm the only morbid one. Here, jot this down. If you guys have not read the book, it's called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. One of my all-time favorite books. It is so good. And it's a page turner. You start that book, you're going to finish it because it is good. And he's such a great storyteller. And he talks about going to a funeral. Was it in that one or Scary Close? All right, read Scary Close after that because it's all about relationships and connection. Scary Close is all about connection and the being vulnerable. Same author. You have to take off your mask and be totally vulnerable to really connect. So that whole book's about connection. But he talks about going to a funeral. He was kind of invited and he went, and it was this lady, she'd passed away of cancer, and he was blown away by how many people came and what they felt and what they said and how they celebrated her life. And he went away from it. He wrote all about it really, really poetically. It's so beautiful. He's like, I want my funeral to be like that. He says, and I realized at that moment, if my funeral is going to be anything like that, I have to live as a different person, a better person. I have to live a better life story for my funeral to look like that. Because if I were to die right now, my funeral wouldn't look like that, right? That was his whole point, and he said it so well. And I remember thinking, yes, I want to live my life in such a way, like so much impact, so much connection, so much bond, that when I depart from this world, man, people celebrate.
Celebrate? Wait, that's Scrooge.
They celebrate my life. Yeah, not celebrate that I'm gone, but they celebrate my life, right? You guys with me? Who wants to live like that? Man, I do. I want to live that way. I want to have connection. I want to have friends. I want to have friendships. Oh man, so good. Okay, another one here. So Charlie's asking, what do you mean by influence? Like being able to change someone's mind or change their emotions or change them somehow? Awesome question.
Good.
Awesome question. Influence is actually one of the things I end up talking about a lot in coaching, particularly in parenting or in work. And I always ask my clients to define it, and they all define it a little differently, but it's this idea of persuasion, or again, connection, right? I want to influence Rachel, not to change her, but to ask for her help to pursue my dreams, and ask her to come on this journey with me together. Like there has to be a tremendous amount of influence in close relationships.
In some ways, it does kind of involve all of those things at some point, but part of the power of influencing is the ability to discern what's needed when. So if you're influencing your children, then sometimes you do need to change their minds. Sometimes you need to help them change their emotions. Sometimes, ultimately, as their mentor, you are helping to change them, to help them develop and mature and grow. And all of that requires influence, because ultimately influence is the ability to work with someone and help them to do what's best for them.
Right. So help people make good decisions, right? Man, we all need help making good decisions.
And or get on board with your own thing, a family vision, a personal vision, like to have this, it's a shared vision in a way. It's a shared vision of this is what we want to achieve together, or this is what you want to become as a person, especially if you're talking to a child. Let me share the vision and the tools, if I have them, to help you get there. And all of that requires the ability to influence, the ability to have diplomacy, to have, what's another good word for that? To have,
influence?
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. Yeah, to just have this, it's a power in a way, but it's not. I was talking to my kids about this other day, actually, because Greg and I are taking a trip to Portugal to celebrate our anniversary in next March. And we're going to be gone for about 2 weeks.
House hunting, people, house hunting. We're going to look for a place to live in Portugal.
Anyway, so we're
You're all invited.
I'm trying to tell my story.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to be gone about 2 weeks.
And it's going to be amazing.
And previously in 2020, right before COVID, we took a 2-week trip or a 10-day trip to Thailand, and we left our kids home alone.
No, we did in 2020 we did
Thailand.
Oh, in 2021 we did.
Oh, yeah, but they weren't totally alone. They were in a house, a beach house with some German friends. But anyways, in 2020, we took a trip to Thailand and we left them home alone for 10 days. But we did have our then 17-year-old daughter at home with them. Well, now we just have the 6 at home, and now our son is 17. But anyways, I was prepping them all, or I am prepping them on being home alone for 2 weeks while we're gone, because that's the plan. And I was talking about this difference between influence and manipulation. Because sometimes while children are learning, while teenagers are learning, they're trying to model what mom and dad are doing when they're influencing their children. But what they end up sometimes doing is manipulating their siblings, right? And so we were having a good discussion on the difference. And very often, and I think this is why this is so critical, very often the difference between influencing someone and manipulating someone comes down to the bond or the attachment that you have with that person. Now, sometimes I call that leverage, although that can also sound like a manipulative term. But if you've gained influence, if you've gained respect, if you've gained leverage with somebody because of the relationship you have with them, that can be the emotional deposits you've made with them, that can be the quality time you've spent with them, that can be the things that you have done for them without expectation of return. All of that gains you this ability to influence, because, and I was telling my kids, I'm like, I can ask something from my 11-year-old son that he is more willing to do than if you ask him, whichever child, because I have done more for him and I have made more emotional deposits in his emotional bank account than you have. So when I ask those things, I have the leverage and I have the influence to get a positive response. Where if you have those things and you haven't made those deposits and you haven't developed that attachment or that bond, it doesn't work the same. You can't do the same tactics and get the same results, because ultimately it comes down to the different relationship that you have. And so you have to learn how to gauge that. And I was telling them, you need to be working on deposits so that when mom and dad are gone for 2 weeks, you have the influence necessary to get the responses that you need from your younger siblings.
So you kept using that word deposits, which is
Yes.
cool, because that's exactly what I was thinking of. It really comes from Stephen Covey's, there's a book of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about how every relationship has an emotional bank account, so to speak. And we make deposits and withdrawals. And some of them get overdrawn. And there's a deficit in that account. And we lose the connection and the bond. We can really damage it. And just going through life, like living together as human beings, there's automatically going to be withdrawals.
Because of friction.
Yeah, there's going to be friction. There's going to be times where withdrawals happen. So the one thing we can really influence, well, we can make withdrawals minimal, but man, the one thing we can deeply influence is making deposits. Lots and lots of good deposits. So that's our oldest daughter trying to call, sorry. So one thing, well, let's talk about that. And let's come up, let's brainstorm and think through deposits. How can you make deposits for the people in your life?
And especially for the, and again, this isn't meant to be a manipulative way.
That's
Although
so cute.
Taken the wrong way, it can be that, it can become manipulative, but especially if you have the role, the responsibility, the stewardship to influence someone, how can you make the deposits necessary to make your influence easier and more automatic?
Which ultimately is building the bond and the connection.
Ultimately building trust.
Yep. So let's share. You can share on the mic, you can share in the chat. What are some specific ways that you can make meaningful deposits in your relationship bank accounts? I think it would actually be, it'd be helpful to think of even specifics, think about a specific person and make a deposit, because deposits are definitely not a one size fits all.
No.
Like a deposit with my 7-year-old is different than a deposit with my 11-year-old, which is different than my 17-year-old.
Right.
So this is where you guys share your ideas.
I was gonna say, I could start. Because I know one thing that I do, and again, this is a very intentional practice. One thing I regularly do to begin the day and to ensure I'm beginning the day with deposits is physical touch and hugging with each child when I greet them in the morning. So I'm very intentional about starting the day on a positive note. Like, even if there's stuff that they've got to get done or whatever, like, I don't start with that. I start with, good morning. How are you? How did you sleep? Give a hug.
What
And
if,
this is like a
what
30-second or more
what
hug.
if they're grumpy and grouchy and like,
Then they need it even more.
yeah, they're getting it.
Yeah. So that's one way that I'm intentional about starting the day with positive deposits.
Okay, your turn. Bottom left-hand corner, little thing that looks like a microphone.
I'll share something.
Go for it.
One thing that I've noticed that I do is when I'm doing stuff around the house, I can't just do stuff around the house. I want my AirPods, so I can multitask and listen to a podcast or listen to a book or whatever. But I was reminded of this today because my teenage daughter got home from school and she was talking to me and I was like, yeah, that's great. And Mom, do you have your AirPods in? And she got, and I think that's something that makes a big difference when you're actually listening versus you're half listening and you're not paying as much attention.
Oh, great reminder.
Yeah.
The full listen.
The full
I have gotten in trouble with a particular beautiful woman nearby. If I ever try to listen like this, and I'm looking like I'm checking an email, or I got a message, and I'm like, I'm with you, babe. And I'm like, oh, I just got this message. And I'm like, I can answer and listen. Oh, I get in trouble.
Not possible.
Not possible. I mean, it's possible, but not possible with her.
It's not possible.
So yeah, the full listen, full, like, give the gift of full engagement. That's huge, because what it does is it makes that person feel like they're the most important thing in your world at that moment. What a beautiful gift. If you feel like if they feel like you're distracted or not really interested, what could be a deposit turns into a withdrawal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great one. Okay, others. Hit that microphone button. How can we make deposits?
Okay, I'll go. Okay, so basically I mean, I feel like they're kind of all the same, but like with my fiance, of course, like hugging and like, yeah, eye contact and not being like on my phone, or if he comes home, then like, you greet them like at the door and like, oh, I'm happy to see you, like that, and ask about their day. And then also a big thing that I notice, well, when I'm working with my patients, like as a nurse, when you first go in and you meet them, you first just, talk about them. Like oh, how are you? And you let them talk first. And you're not at the computer, like you're just facing them, like, eye contact and listening to them. And then, okay, I'll be back. And yeah. So, but that's like something you can apply to basically everyone, eye contact and let them talk.
Exactly. Yes. And being interested, like you said, asking questions and then just listening and being engaged. I love that. One I just totally love that you said is being excited to see someone. That's huge. That's why people love dogs, you guys. Dogs are always excited to see you. Even like you beat them and the dog's like, whoa, you're back. And like dogs, that's amazing. We could be more like a dog. It's easy. It's a dog. Like just be genuinely excited to see people. It makes you feel like $1,000,000, man. That's why that's why people love little kids too. They get puppies and little kids because when your little kids, like they see you and they give you this huge running hug. Like even when you've been a bad parent, they're just like run and hug you and you're like, this is the best. Like it's awesome. So, and that, again, that's just a conscious choice, isn't it? I can choose to be excited to see Rachel after I've done like an hour of coaching and I'm like, oh, I miss her so much. And I can run upstairs and give her a hug and a kiss because we've been apart for so long, right? And I do this, by the way.
Yes.
Our time apart, like in hours, is brutal. We suffer. And now she moved her office upstairs. She's on the top floor and I'm in the basement.
So far.
It's so far to run like 2 flights of stairs to get to her. Exercise, right? It's good for me.
Yeah.
So I get up and I'm like, Breathe, I'm so excited to see you, babe. But that's a big one. It really is. Sincerely, that's a big one. Be excited to see people. Be excited to see your kids, your spouse, your friends. Like lean in.
Well, and I think it's kind of funny and we laugh about it, but really I think that's one of the key things that's allowed us to maintain a great relationship and to be still in love is that even though for the past at least 10 to 15 years, we've nearly spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, you've taken trips, I've taken trips, but otherwise we're together all the time. We work together, we eat together 3 meals a day. I mean, we do everything together all the time. And the only reason that doesn't get boring and dull
It's because Rachel's amazing. Otherwise, we'd be like,
It's because
I'm just
you-
so tired of seeing you again.
because we keep it exciting. Like we still, well, even Stephanie's comment, pausing to make eye contact, sharing true feelings at key
Yes.
moments when you're leaving,
Yes.
coming home. We're not necessarily leaving and coming home all the time, but when
Sometimes we step outside so we can come back.
but we still make it a big deal and we have eye contact and we touch and like we make it significant even though we're in the same house all day long together, even if we're not in the same room. So it is a simple thing, but it makes a big difference and it makes the relationship sustainable and exciting long term.
It's awesome. Okay, so now if you'll allow us, I want it to go even a little bit deeper, and you're going to have to like go inside your mind palace here. And I want you to think of specific things for specific people and get creative. Actually, if you pay attention, it doesn't take that much effort because you're like, what would that specific person really appreciate from me? And it gets into the love language thing. I'm going to assume most of you have heard of the love languages, right? Between us all, I think we can name them. So it's physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. Oh, between myself, I
job.
was able to name them.
Way to
go. So it's one of those things. And what's interesting is you might be aware of your love languages, how you like to receive, but most of us, if we like to receive love in that way, we just think, oh, I'll give it that way. But the receiver might not be into that. The receiver might want something that you're like, that's not really,
I don't
I don't like that. Right? But that is part of relationships and deep connection, is learning to give love in their love language, the way they like to receive it. And even learning to receive love in the way they like to give it. Now, I'm not saying total self-denial there, but if someone in your life loves to cuddle, and you're like, don't touch me, right? You might want to learn how to cuddle. If they love giving you gifts and you're like, we have so much crap, stop with the gifts. Like, work through that. Like one time Rachel was like, she actually gave me a list of gifts she likes to receive. So I'm not going to be like, babe, I bought you a bowling ball. Right. And work through that. But okay, so this is my, I want to, oh, go ahead.
Just as far as with parenting goes, I know for me, one of the cool things about small children, especially, is that they very often are asking for what they need from you. Like they're asking for you to do something with them, to jump on the trampoline with them, or to read them a
cuddle.
story, or
Yeah.
to cuddle. And
They're very expressive of what
they're
they want.
expressive. And if you pay attention to that, because I know the tendency can be, I know I can do this where I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to jump on the tramp, or I don't want to read you a story. I actually have this thing. I don't like reading out loud. I know that a homeschool mom shouldn't not like reading out loud, but
How
I
can
don't.
you say that?
I know. Okay. And so I have to make an effort to do those things that they request, especially the ones
they
I'm
love
not.
it.
Yeah, especially the ones I'm not crazy about. I mean, it's easy to say yes to the things you like to do too. But so when you're asking the question, like, well, what are some of those things you can think of? I very often know, because it's sometimes the things I've been like, yeah, later, we'll do that later, like, because I don't want to do that, but that's the thing they're asking for. And that's the way I can show love. And so when you just give in and like, okay, let's do this thing, do your little craft together, that's how I can make that deposit and I can build that bond with them.
And you can tell because the person is like floating when you make deposits. You guys know this. You've all experienced this. You've felt the floating feeling, and you've seen it in others. I mean, they're almost just like levitating when you deposit. And there's micro deposits, things we ought to be doing daily, and then there's macro deposits, which are my favorite ones. Of like, so our 14-year-old daughter, she is a pure adventurer. Like we packed up and drove the Pan American Highway to Costa Rica when she was 4 months old. So her life has been adventure. That girl loves adventure.
She's addicted.
You want to torture her, just have her stay somewhere for a couple of months. She's like, I can't do it. So she and I have birthdays about a week apart. And so we are taking a surprise trip to another continent. And she is thrilled out of her mind, but she doesn't know where. We've kept it secret, which is also working. But it's just
we
the two
keep
of us.
telling her it's Florida, but
Like, we're just going to Florida. It's the only place that's open. But we're going to take her to some epic place. And she's like a big continent and country counter. Like, it's a big deal to her.
she's
Right?
addicted.
So going to a new country and a new continent. I mean, gigantic deposit.
But
okay?
then at the same time, so we do, as part of the intentional deposit thing, we do a date every week with one of our kids. Saturday night is our date. Friday night is a mom, dad, kid date. And her date was last Friday.
It was awesome.
And so even when
It
you're
was
talking
so
about that,
special.
when you make a deposit and that person is floating, and this happens with all the kids, but it happened with her last Friday, we take them out, just the two of us with the one child. We go get whatever food they want, which is usually Indian, Thai, or sushi. And they get a chance to just sit there, and usually this happens with all of them. They just start talking,
They
and
just
talking, and
start.
talking, and
And
talking,
they
and
go,
talking, and
go,
talking, and
go.
talking.
They love the attention.
You honestly think, I don't care a ton about everything you're saying, and you're analyzing every detail of The Last Dance or whatever.
Or the fictional book
But
you're
that's
reading.
not the point. That's not the point. The point is, like Charlie was saying earlier, you're sitting and you're listening, and they get a chance to talk. And so
It's huge.
it's their opportunity to receive that love in the way that speaks to them.
And this is gold, even for our littles, you guys. We'll take our littles to a restaurant, and they're just like, oh, I can't believe it. It's amazing. Just time with us. That's it. Right. So the date thing, we recommend that one. It's a winner. Okay. What other specifics? Let's brainstorm together.
I think we were the only ones that shared something. So.
Oh yeah. So
We did a lot of
think
talking.
of specific people and specific things. Again, if we all brainstorm together here, if we all mastermind, we're all going to come up with a lot of great ideas. You can walk away today with a list of ideas of ways you can make deposits. Specific people, specific things. This actually takes some awareness. You got to pay attention to people to realize what they like.
Mhm.
Fortunately, you guys are all so good looking. We can just sit here and look at you all night long while you think of your answers.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so you said earlier, like Rachel gave you this list of gifts that she likes to receive. So when you give a gift, like off of that list, does that count like as love, or is it, or like, yeah, I wish Rachel was here right now,
She's
but
back. She's back.
like,
Okay, this
like-
is so good. Where did we just talk about
We
this?
just
Like-
talked about this.
Was it our podcast or when did we do that?
We did a podcast. It's not coming out till January with
Oh, that's where it
another
was. That's
lady,
where it was.
Monica Tanner, who has a podcast called The Brighter Side of Marriage.
On the bright side of marriage. Yep.
Bright Side of Marriage. And we talked about this very thing because we were actually talking about Valentine's Day because she's going to release it right before Valentine's Day. And we were discussing this idea of with Valentine's Day and other holidays or anniversaries or whatever daily life, we have these misaligned expectations. And we're thinking in our mind, which ties into the love languages.
Perfect.
We're thinking in our mind, this is what I expect on Valentine's. And then our spouse is not thinking at all about anything or thinking
Or trying
here
to guess.
or
I'm
trying
just-
to
I'm
guess
just guess like Rachel will want
chocolate.
a new pair of shoes. And I go pick out a pair of shoes and she's like, oh, thanks.
These are horrible. Right? And so it's like this. And so then we get upset and we get hurt feelings and we get all, all this stuff. And we were like, there's really a simple answer. It's like, you just communicate. This is what I like. I like you to do this. I like these things. I like this place. I like this restaurant. I like these
Which
flowers.
she did. She's like, these are the kind of restaurants I'd like you to take me to. These are the kind of gifts I'd like to receive. Right. And your question is super valid because the
Does that
next
count?
response is like, well, that's kind of lame if I have to tell you.
Right. And so we talked through that in this podcast of, and I was there too. I've been there where I felt like, well, if you really loved me and you really knew me, you would know what I liked. You would know what to get me. You would know what I would want. And it only counts if you come up with it. But then I got over that and I realized it counts just as much if you tell them and then they do it. Because you're like, oh my gosh, you love me enough that you did it and you did exactly what I wanted. So I got exactly what I wanted, right? So it all works out better in the end. And we do this with practically everything. I mean, we've gotten to a point now, and even, okay, the typical husband-wife conversation of she needs to talk and she just wants him to listen, right? But what does a man want to do? He wants to go into fix-it mode. So he wants to start talking about all the ways to solve the problem that I'm sharing with him. Well, we are to the point now where I will just tell him, I need you to listen right now, not fix. And he says, okay. Or I'll say, I need some advice. I need you to help me fix this. Okay, I'll do that.
It's gold,
smooth.
man. Cause then I'd be like, oh, I'll just close my mouth. All I gotta do is sit here. Yeah. It's amazing. Where before she'd start telling me things she's frustrated about. I'm like, babe, I can fix it. Fine, I'm leaving. I'm going to take care of your problem. She's like, where are you going? I just wanted you to
I want
listen
you
to
to
my
listen
problem.
to me. Why are you leaving me? Right? So in reality, when you can get to this place, I think it just works better.
Better.
It's more, it's smoother, it's funner. Oh, well, so one of the things we talked about on the podcast was the Valentine's of 2020 when we went to Thailand, and then we went to the Ritz-Carlton to have dinner on Valentine's Day. we had this whole trip planned and there wasn't any guessing. There wasn't any, expectations. It was like, this is what I want. This is what we're going to do. And Greg said, great, I'll pay for it. So it was.
And I'll drive the scooter and
I'll
you
drive
can be the babe on the back.
That's right. We drove a scooter there. So
Do you know how cool that is, you guys? You got to do that someday. Rent scooters in Krabi and drive along the coast out to the Ritz-Carlton to have dinner as you watch the sunset. It was awesome.
and it counts because you have a great time and you plan it together because you're sharing with each other what it is you want and what it is you like and what it is you don't want. So that if he says, hey, I really want to take you fishing on Valentine's, and you're like, no, unless you love fishing.
And in my
but-
mind, I was like, that's the best trip ever.
But it's okay. I feel comfortable saying, you know what? I want to go fishing with you and I'll go fishing with you. But for Valentine's Day or our anniversary or my birthday, this is what I want to do instead. So that's my thoughts about that.
Even on one of the things she told me she likes is jewelry. But even that, I'm like hesitant to choose. So we kind of have this working agreement now. If we go somewhere really cool,
And I find something.
we go to a jewelry shop. I'm like, do you want something here? And she gets it, I buy it for her. Yeah, win.
Score.
It's a score all the way around, right?
Well, and Stephanie says it's like a bonus because it's proof of having been heard. Yeah,
yes,
exactly. So yeah, it is. It's you're being heard. That's why I think it's not a doesn't count scenario, because if it actually, because then the other scenario is you say it and he still doesn't do it, and then you've got other things
That's
to work
double.
through.
That's a double.
But if
that's
he
a
says
double
it,
withdrawal.
right, and it happens, then yeah, it's proof of being heard, and you're gaining more understanding about each other. And ultimately, that's what this is about. A relationship is gaining deeper understanding about who this person is. And the only way to really do that is for them to be aware enough of themselves to know what they actually like, and then to be able to communicate it to you, which is actually a very complicated process. That whole thing right there sounds simple, but it is actually very complicated. So it's levels.
Plus, and Laura, this is so cool. It's like, didn't go there, but did moped around Thailand.
Yeah.
It's the way to go in Phuket. Phuket is beautiful. That's awesome.
Fun.
Little secret here. If one night or day you're just talking to your children or your spouse or friends or whoever, and you're just asked like, what are the things you like? What this, and ask specific questions and take notes. In a few weeks or months, they will totally forget that you ever took notes. And then down the road, you have this little place, and you're like, you go up to one of your kids and be like, hey, you know what? Let's go grab some sushi. And they're like, what? I love sushi. You're like, you do? Let's go. Right. And you're thoughtful about it. It's not manipulative. It's thoughtful. You're paying attention.
Yeah, I will actually do that. I'll do this with my parents, my siblings, my aunt and uncle. If I happen to hear them mention something like, oh, I love Nuremberg gingerbread from Germany, I take notes and I write that down. And then if there's ever a gift giving occasion, I look at my notes. What is it? My brother, he loves swords. My whatever, my mom loves this. And so you take notes when it comes up, when you hear it, because you think, oh, I'll remember that, but you never do. So I write it down on my phone so that I have notes on what to give for gifts that are actually really meaningful.
And then they're like, what?
How did
I
you know?
love this. How did you know? And you're like, pay attention. Okay, we're talking a lot. There needs to be more talking from okay, go for it.
Okay, so going along with that, so my daughter, she found a book on her bookshelf. It's called 52 Lists of Happiness. And I bought it a long time ago. It was one of those that didn't get used. And she's like, Mom, can I use this? And I said, sure, but let's copy the pages that you want to write in so that we can use it, later on. So the other day she was working in it and she copied a list of 52 things that make me happy right now. And she left it out. And I was like, light bulb in my head, take a picture of this and remember this, because some of the things were things that I didn't even
like one of them was being, how did she phrase it? Something about being independent and making choices for myself. And I was like, okay, that's a good one to remember. Another one was, now I'm drawing a blank, but they were just random things that I sometimes get after her about. Like she likes having certain time to herself to go over her schedule, where sometimes I'm like, get out of your room, come with the family. And so seeing those lists, I thought I need to do this with all the kids,
Yes.
take a picture. And so just like you were saying with things that they like, it's kind of a trigger that this will be a deposit later on when they're not thinking about it.
Yes. Man, that's actually a perfect idea. That would be like for a family, like you're saying, do with all the kids, that would be like a great morning devotional where like everyone writes down 25 things that make them happy. And then how easy it is as a parent to be like, oh, this is so fun, you guys. I'm gonna take pictures of all this for scrapbooking. Or I mean, you're just like, boom, I got a record, right? Or
So one of the things she wrote down was listening to music makes her happy. And I'm the type of person that I like silence. And so I'm like, get those ear pods out, or I always call them ear pods, huh? Get those AirPods, like grandpa. Get those AirPods out of your ears. Like, let your brain be still and think. But that brings her happiness. And so to me, it was kind of a wake up call. Like, okay, she's not going to be just like you. And a way to strengthen that relationship is to kind of let her be happy in her things that she's happy, she finds joy in.
yes,
Mhm.
so true.
Yeah.
We have a son who is our music man. If he is around, there will be music playing. Period. He like he bought
And
a portable
he's-
speaker and he takes it everywhere.
And
Like,
he's the happiest kid.
if he just like da, 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 and then like everywhere, it doesn't matter where you are, boom, all of a sudden music's going. You're like, what? There's not supposed to be music here. I actually literally we went backpacking. I'm like, sorry, when we're in nature, no music. Like I had to lay down a rule. So as soon as we got back in the car, he's like, music's on, baby. It was like they were all like, oh, it was a group of teens too. I was leading on a backpacking trip. They all thought they were gonna die. It was, but it's, yeah, I love that. And then your happiness is silence. You can put up a little sign, say, I feel happy when you all are quiet.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. I love it. Okay. Any other thoughts around this? If we allow it just to kind of come up to the forefront of our minds and just give it thought, like how can I be more intentional and deliberate about creating bonds and connecting? And just a little more thought and strategy goes such a long ways. Does that kind of hit?
I have a
home?
question.
Yes.
I would be curious, you guys said you do the once a week date nights. Like what are some other very targeted regular things that you guys do like that?
Good question.
Every day, well, mostly every weekday for sure. We do a family devotional at 9 o'clock. And that can be anything from talking about current events to talking about the schedule for the day to reading from something like Story of the World to, we have a question and answer question book that goes through like 365 days. We ask questions that are anything like, if you were to paint a mural on the wall, what would it be? Or if you were to start a business, what kind of business? Or all kinds of questions. So we do that every day.
That's fun. I
Um,
participate in specific sports or activities with the kids 2 to 3 times a week. So we'll do like
Krav
Krav
Maga.
Maga, or my daughter's super into volleyball right now. So all I have to do is go out and pepper with her a little bit. Oh man, she's floats away. So that's a big one. I hug all the kids every day. I wrestle with them. We're real physical. So I'm physical with them every single day. We try to talk
Every-
to each one of them.
Every Friday after devotional, we do what we call Mad School. The kids named it that. Mom and Dad School, Mad School. And
So that's just the olders.
that's with the
us.
teens, and it's essentially time focusing on things we think they need to work on more. So we'll do writing exercises. We will discuss,
We'll go deeper into
go into
conversations.
deeper into
big
current events and or
topics.
history. We'll read books that we discuss together. So that's another one we do. Greg and I get a massage every week.
Deposit.
Yeah.
We love supporting our little local Chinese ladies who are amazing and it's surprisingly strong.
They walk on Greg's back. It's
They
amazing.
inflict pain. I have one son who loves projects and woodworking, and so I'll do that with him. That's the way he and I connect. My other son, he wants me to help him start businesses and kind of mentor and coach him. So he came to me, asked for that. So I'm doing that with him. So we're trying to
then
have something I do specifically with each child regularly, a couple times a week, ideally.
And then of course, like, bedtime. I read to my younger girls at bed. I do read aloud to them at bedtime.
Trampoline with the littles.
I think that's the
they-
basic framework. And then
Yeah.
besides that, we just fill it in with whatever is going on in life. Well, I mean, around our then working schedule, of
Yeah.
course.
But we play a lot. We have fun a lot, and we work
And-
together a lot.
I mean, because of the nature of our life, we do homeschool and we work at home. So we do basically have almost every meal together. Not always, because sometimes we'll all go down at different times for lunch, but a lot of times we're all in the kitchen at lunch, even though it's not like we have a formal lunch. We're all just there getting food, but we're all there. So we kind of connect again and talk about things. And
I think that's the one thing we do really well is we are constantly having conversations.
Yeah.
Like we're in the kitchen, wherever we are together, we're just talking about all kinds of stuff all over the place. And so we're constantly engaging in fun conversation and ideas and just trying to wrap our heads around everything that's happening, from investing to current events to history to philosophy to personal development. I mean, all
to
over the place.
dances, to volleyball, to
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of the question book? Yeah. We look at it every day.
No, I know. It's something just basic, like 365 questions. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, that's not helpful.
Okay, cool. Anything else, you guys? If not, bond away. Oh, I really, sending a gift to someone through the mail or even a simple card for a long distance, that is a game changer. Especially, I think most people, it's so rare now, a handwritten letter or card or a gift. That's so rare to do that it really stands out and has an impact, especially if it's a person who really treasures and values things like that. I don't know if
I save all my notes.
you
and
ladies are like
cards.
that. Somebody writes you a note and you guard it forever. Like you'll find a box and Rachel.
I save all of your
kept-
notes and cards.
I know. So I found, I'm like, man, every handwritten thing I've ever written is read. Like,
Oh, and anything.
I have to
anyone-
keep it at a limit or we'd have too much stuff to carry around.
And stuff people write to you, I save it.
Yeah,
too.
she even saves that. I'm like, that can go. She's like, no, it won't. It was handwritten.
We're saving it.
Okay. All right. Love it, you guys. Just be thoughtful about it. Watch how it changes the dynamics of your relationships and the influence you have and the connection you feel, the support you feel, the loneliness evaporates, the hopefulness, the joy, the spark and romance comes back. Casey, you close your ears here for a minute, but that spark and romance and the kissy and snuggly, it comes back. It's awesome, right? And it's just with a little bit of intentional thought. He's like, I'm not plugging my ears for the kissing talk. Love you, buddy. Okay. Love you guys. You're the best. Thanks for being here. Go connect with your families. Have a good night. Reach upward.